There is a worship practice for some Christians called the Stations of the Cross. It is not very common in the United States. It is found in mostly Catholic countries throughout the world. The Stations of the Cross, also known as Via Dolorosa, are traditionally a series of 14 events or moments that depict the journey of Jesus Christ from his condemnation, his abuse as he is forced to carry his cross, and ultimately to his crucifixion and burial. The Stations of the Cross serves as a devotional practice for Christians, particularly Catholics, although other denominations follow this practice as well, to meditate on and commemorate the Passion of Christ. Believers typically move from one station to another, pausing at each station to reflect on the suffering endured by Jesus. This is Via Christi. It is the work of one artist, Alejandro Santana, his own personal vision of a Stations of the Cross, created on a hillside deep in the Patagonia region of Argentina. But as we said before, the traditional worship sites known as Stations of the Cross depict the last hours of Christ's life, the Passion of the Christ. But Santana's version is much more ambitious. Its 23 sculptural stations depict Jesus' entire life. This sacred place is in many ways like an expanded Stations of the Cross. Alejandro Santana mixes the religious context with political commentary, and he also often replaces the traditional depiction of biblical figures with the indigenous peoples of Patagonia, a people called Mapuche. But despite these differences, the site still basically serves as a traditional Stations of the Cross and invites visitors to symbolically walk in the footsteps of Jesus, mentally and spiritually retracing his life's journey. Via Christi serves as a tangible way to remember and honor the suffering, sacrifice, and love that Jesus demonstrated through his crucifixion. We'll explore Via Christi and show you some of its most fascinating sculptures next on Sacred Sounds and Spaces. This is Via Christi, and it attracts Christian pilgrims from all over the world. This sacred place is in many ways like an expanded Stations of the Cross. And it was a massive artistic undertaking, which was started in the year 2000 and took years to complete. It is the work of Alejandro Santana, an Argentinian architect and sculptor who devoted years creating this pilgrimage site. Via Christi begins at the western slope of La Cruz Hill, and worshipers are invited to stop and pray and reflect on the 23 sculptures the artist has created along the mile-and-a-half journey up to the summit. This is the first station found at the foot of this pine-covered hill in the shadow of the Andes Mountains. It depicts the Nativity and is called God Made Man to Save Us. But this is a much different nativity scene than we're used to. Mary, Joseph, and the three wise men are not depicted as people from the Middle East. Rather, they are indigenous people from the New World. They are a people known as the Mapuche, and they have lived and fought against and have suffered from the Spanish conquistadors in much the same way as most indigenous peoples have in the Americas. They are a marginalized people who have maintained their own ancient views of religion and cosmology. Station 3 is one of the more fascinating sculptures. It is entitled Jesus and the Temptations, and it shows Jesus being tempted by Satan in the desert. Satan is depicted as a man in a suit with a long tail, which ends with a snake's head. He wears a mask, but also has many faces. Stalin, George W. Bush, and the artist himself are depicted as faces of Satan. There is also a spot where a mirror is installed, so the viewer himself is an image of the devil. In Jesus and the Beatitudes, Jesus is shown teaching his disciples. But these disciples are world religious leaders, among them Mother Teresa, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. The next station is called Our Father. It shows 7 people, gazing upwards, hand in hand, each representing a world religion, as depicted by an emblem on their tunic. In the center of them all is a 7-pointed star. This station is entitled Jesus Heals the One-Armed Man, and it is another example of Alejandro Santana's social commentary. The sculpture shows a young man with a disfigured arm. The young man is being beckoned by Jesus, but he is being held back by what appears to be a false preacher who has a Bible in one hand while holding the young man back. This is Station 10. Jesus washes the feet of his friends. Station 12 is another fascinating political allegory. A defiant Jesus stands in the center, while what appears to be 5 would-be betrayers are blown away. The betrayers are not the biblical Judas. They are all depicted as modern soldiers, and all of their faces have been replaced by images which recall Operation Condor. Operation Condor was a U.S.-backed plan that helped right-wing dictatorships and tortured and murdered many in South America throughout the Cold War. Alejandro Santana seems to be depicting Jesus as Argentina itself, while being betrayed by the United States and its allies. Only now have we reached the point where the subject matter of Santana's Via Christi overlaps with the traditional Stations of the Cross. Here we have Jesus carrying the cross, although the cross seems to symbolize the sins of the world. Starving children and emaciated mothers are embedded in the wood itself. Station 15 is another fascinating allegorical statue that mixes Christianity, history, and politics. And similarly to the betrayal of Jesus, here again Jesus is depicted as a symbol of Argentina itself. It is entitled Jesus is Deprived of His Clothes. Jesus is being nailed to the cross by a Spanish conquistador of the 16th century, while being stripped by Jorge Rafael Videla, a notorious brutal dictator of Argentina in the late 1970s. This is entitled, Jesus Gives Up His Spirit. The cross is replaced by spears. Station 18 is entitled Jesus Dies and is taken down from the cross. Station 22 shows Jesus as he appeared to his disciples after his resurrection. The male figure seems to be depicted as a Mapuche. Jesus sends his disciples is another curious depiction. Jesus has been resurrected, but it is the reaction of his disciples that is so interesting. Two of them seem to be consumed by sorrow. Others are in disbelief. Only one seems to recognize that Christ has returned. The penultimate station in the artist Alejandro Santana's Via Christi is called Jesus and the Miraculous Fishing. Again, Jesus has been resurrected and has returned to see his disciples. When Peter recognizes Jesus, he jumps out of their boat to greet Jesus. Nearing the top of the hill is the final station. It is unlike any of the others and is monumental in scope. The sculptor and architect Alejandro Santana has created an image of Christ emerging out of the mountainside out of steel and glass. Here you can see the wounds in his hands. And as you keep climbing up the mountain, you realize that this structure is actually a shrine. This is truly a place meant for the Christian faithful to reflect on the sacrifice of Jesus, and for anyone to marvel at the commitment and artistry to create this vast sacred space.